My parents set me up and sent me to prison for 3 years for a lie I never told. They blamed me for the car accident that caused my sister-in-law to lose her baby, something that was never my intention. They thought this broken woman would stay silent, helpless, and forgotten behind bars. But they had no idea what was coming. Even now, I can still hear my mother's voice in the courtroom, cold as ice. A life for a life. My father nodded beside her, whispering, "Disappear for the sake of the family name." My younger brother smirked from the witness stand. "You owe her this, little sis." Every word was calculated. Every tear was rehearsed. They painted me as the monster who destroyed their future grandson, all just to keep what was rightfully mine. I rejected every single visitor request for 3 years. I didn't want to see their faces. I didn't want to hear another lie. The damp walls of the Lee Arrendale State Prison became my calendar. With a broken fingernail, I scratched line after line into the concrete. 1,095 marks in total. Tomorrow would be the last one. Tomorrow I get out of here. The air in this place smells like rust, regret, and waiting. But tomorrow the gates will open and everything will change. Before I tell you how it all started and how it ends, leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. I want to know who is listening to the story of a woman's journey through family betrayal and the price of truth. Tell me about a time someone you trusted turned their back on you. We're all here for the same reason, because some wounds never heal and some debts must be paid in full. The day of my release is the day every lie begins to turn against its owner. Those final days in the women's correctional facility outside of Atlanta felt endless. I sat on the cold metal bunk, the thin mattress worn down in spots from years of use. With the jagged edge of a broken nail, I etched one more mark into the damp concrete wall behind the bed frame. Those marks were my only calendar, straight, uniform, emotionless. 1,095 lines. Tomorrow would be the last. The memories came back without warning, showing no mercy. I am Keziah Vance, the woman who built Vance Cloud Solutions from nothing. It all started in my parents' garage in Cascade Heights with a second-hand laptop and an idea for secure cloud storage tailored for small businesses. I worked without rest, skipping college parties and turning down the weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard that my friends begged me to join. At 25, I landed my first paying client. By 33, the company was public, valued at $90 million. I owned the majority of the shares, part of a trust my grandfather established that I couldn't touch until I came of age. But the largest portion was earned through pure hustle. I signed every major contract. I represented the brand at every investor meeting. Thane, my brother, 4 years younger than me, never accepted that reality. He was smart and charismatic, but he was impatient. Growing up, he was my parents' favorite because he was the son, the supposed true heir to the Vance legacy. They always spoke as if the company would be his one day, as if I were just keeping the seat warm for him. I heard those whispers through closed doors. I caught the looks of disappointment at Sunday dinners when my father looked at me, wishing I had been born a man. Thane never said it out loud, but I felt his silent resentment every time I announced record growth. Every time a local tech magazine ran a profile calling me the Queen of Atlanta Tech. He would smile and clap, but the smile never reached his eyes. Then, Seela entered his life. She was beautiful, sharp, and knew exactly what she wanted. They got married quickly after she became pregnant. My mother was overjoyed. Finally, a grandson to carry on the bloodline. She called me, her voice bubbly. "Take Seela to her prenatal checkup for me, honey. I'm tied up with the church auxiliary meeting." I agreed, as I always did. It was the duty of the eldest daughter in the Vance family. That day, it was pouring rain, the kind of relentless Georgia downpour that turns I-85 into a river. I was driving the company Tesla with Seela in the passenger seat, her hand resting on her stomach. At first, the conversation was light, baby names, nursery ideas. Then it shifted to business. Seela asked out of the blue, "Thane mentioned he wanted to pull some capital for a side investment. What do you think?" I kept my tone neutral. We're in the middle of expanding our server infrastructure. Pulling funds now would tank the stock price and hurt every shareholder, including Mom and Dad's retirement accounts. Sela smirked. You always put the company before family, don't you? Thane is your brother. He deserves a bigger piece. The argument escalated. I tried to keep the car steady, but she wouldn't let up. She accused me of being selfish, of clinging to power just to prove something to our parents. Her voice rose as she gestured wildly. In the heat of the argument, Sela suddenly lunged and yanked hard on the steering wheel. The car veered instantly. The tires hydroplaned across the wet pavement, scraping the guardrail with a deafening screech. The airbags deployed. The windshield shattered. I slammed on the brakes, bringing us to a halt amidst the honking of surrounding traffic. I turned to her, my heart racing. Are you okay? Sela clutched her stomach, her face pale. The ambulance arrived quickly. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed she had lost the baby. I sat stunned in the hallway, but what followed turned the shock into a nightmare. Sela told the police that I had swerved deliberately, angry over the money dispute. Thane stood by her side, holding her hand, looking at me with a mix of performance-level grief and resolve. My parents rushed to the hospital. My mother hugged Sela, sobbing, and then turned to me with a coldness in her voice I had never heard. My father said nothing. He just nodded when the officers asked about long-standing family tensions. The dashboard camera footage mysteriously vanished. Later, recovery attempts showed the files had been completely wiped, leaving no trace. My business and personal accounts were frozen under an emergency order. Thane filed, claiming a risk of asset dissipation due to my mental instability. Without access to funds, I couldn't hire a top-tier private attorney. I was assigned a young public defender, overwhelmed with cases, who barely glanced at my file before the trial. The trial lasted 3 weeks at the Fulton County Superior Court. My parents took the stand as key witnesses. My mother testified through tears. She's always been jealous of her brother, even as kids. My father added, Keziah controls the company too rigidly. She never gave Thane a real chance. Sela, in a wheelchair with her abdomen bandaged, cried as she described the moment she felt the car deliberately steer toward the barrier. Thane held her, his voice cracking. She grabbed the wheel. I'm sure of it. I testified calmly, recounting the facts exactly as they happened, but I lacked physical evidence. My public defender faltered before the family's unified front. The jurors looked at me with suspicion. A successful businesswoman, suddenly unhinged. The judge sentenced me to 3 years for involuntary manslaughter, along with a restraining order from the company during my incarceration. When the gavel fell, I didn't cry. Only a cold void spread through my chest. Helplessness. That was all that was left. 3 years. 3 years for everything I had built to be torn down from the inside. The sharp click of heels and the duller thud of men's dress shoes echoed down the prison corridor. I set aside the worn paperback I was pretending to read and waited. The guard's voice crackled over the intercom. Final approved visit. They entered the visiting room in a rehearsed group. My parents, Thane, and Sela. My mother had chosen a navy blue dress with her favorite pearl necklace. My father wore the charcoal suit he saved for board meetings. Thane's tie was perfectly knotted, his hair groomed as if he were heading to a photo shoot afterward. Sela carried a small bouquet of lilies, her face composed in a careful mask of sadness. I picked up the receiver on my side of the plexiglass. My father spoke first, leaning forward with that familiar authoritative tone he used when negotiating deals. Keziah, the documents are ready. You transfer the majority of the voting shares to Thane, and we stabilize everything. The company is hemorrhaging with you away. My mother's voice came next, softer, but no less calculated. It's the only way to protect what your grandfather started. Investors are nervous. One signature saves jobs. It saves the legacy. Thane took the phone. His eyes met mine with the same intensity he had shown on the stand. Think about the big picture, little sis. You always said Vance Cloud Solutions was bigger than just one person. Sela pressed her free hand against the glass. After all, you owe it to the family. I held the receiver, but said nothing. Then the door on their side opened again. Amari Vance, my youngest brother, 25 years old, whom I had fired as CFO 18 months before my arrest for what seemed like minor reporting discrepancies, walked in. He wore a sharp gray suit, his hair cut close, looking more like a young executive than someone who had been job hunting for years. He sat next to Thane without speaking to me at first. When he took the phone, his tone was even, almost detached. Family isn't always about who's right or wrong. Sometimes it's about who survives. His eyes drifted away from mine as he said it. I scanned their faces. The parents who had taught me ambition, the brother who had grown in my shadow, the sister-in-law who had joined the family 5 years ago. I felt a wall solidify inside me. "I'm not signing," I said clearly into the receiver. "Never. Consider this goodbye." My father's expression turned to stone. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Thane gripped the phone harder. Amari simply placed the receiver back on its hook without a word. I stood up and walked away. Behind me, my mother's voice rose through the glass. "You're throwing away everything we worked for." The following morning brought the familiar overcast sky and the light Georgia humidity. The prison gates opened punctually. Outside, a small crowd of reporters had gathered, tech journalists from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, a crew from local news, and even someone from a financial channel who had flown in overnight. Cameras clicked as I stepped out in jeans and a simple sweater, carrying nothing but a clear plastic bag with my authorized belongings. My parents were at the front with Thane, holding white roses, their faces prepared in hopeful relief for the lenses. My mother stepped forward first, arms open. "Honey, we're so glad you're home." I kept walking. I passed right by her without changing my pace or meeting their eyes. The roses remained extended, untouched. A sleek black Bentley slid to the curb. The back door opened from the inside. Sterling Blackwood appeared, 34 years old, Harvard Law, known for dismantling corporate fraud cases and never losing a boardroom battle. He had rejected Thane's attempts to hire him 3 times in the last 2 years. "Ms. Vance," he said, loud enough for the nearby microphones to catch. "Your car is waiting." I slid into the back seat. The interior smelled of new leather and subtle cologne. The door closed with a heavy, airtight thud that muffled the sudden barrage of questions. Through the tinted glass, I watched the scene shift. The reporters turned from my family to the car, shouting about who was picking me up and what it meant for Vance Cloud Solutions stock. My mother's arms dropped to her sides. My father's jaw moved in silence. Thane stared at the Bentley's license plate as if he were memorizing it. Sterling settled into the driver's seat. He had insisted on driving himself today. "The penthouse is ready. The team is waiting." I leaned back against the headrest, feeling the smooth acceleration pulling us away from the curb. "Take the long way," I said. "I want to see the city again." The car merged into traffic. Behind us, my former family remained surrounded by cameras, their reconciliation photo op crumbling in real time. I didn't look back for long. The morning light filtered through the windows of the Midtown penthouse overlooking Piedmont Park. I walked into the apartment that had been prepared and stocked weeks ago, and the door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The air smelled clean, lemon wax and fresh linens, nothing like the stale concrete I had breathed for 3 years. I left the small plastic bag of prison belongings on the marble counter and went straight to the bathroom. The shower had 6 rain heads and a handheld attachment, all chrome and glass. I turned the water as hot as I could stand and stayed under it for what felt like hours, scrubbing myself with cedar-scented soap until my skin was raw. The steam rose thick, washing away the smell of institutional disinfectant that had clung to my hair and pores. I watched the gray water swirl down the drain and wondered if rage could be washed away as easily. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a thick white robe, Sterling Blackwood and Odessa Rhodes were waiting in the living room. A mahogany table had been set with neat stacks of documents, 2 open laptops, and a steaming coffee pot. Odessa, 61 years old, silver hair, piercing gaze, was a former prosecutor turned corporate powerhouse. She stood up when I entered. Sterling remained seated, looking at something on his screen. "Welcome home, Ms. Vance," Odessa said, her voice firm and professional. "We have much to discuss." I poured myself coffee into a real ceramic mug, the first in years, and sat across from them. The liquid was dark and intense. It burned my tongue in the best way. Sterling slid the first folder toward me. "Revocation of the emergency power of attorney your brother filed, citing mental incompetence. We're challenging it on the grounds of fraud and lack of medical evidence. Your signature here reactivates your status as majority shareholder, immediately." I signed without hesitation. The pen felt strange in my hand, too smooth, too expensive. Odessa placed the second document in front of me. "Emergency motion for a forensic audit and a temporary freeze on assets. This goes to the Superior Court this afternoon. It prevents any further transfer of company funds until the audit concludes." I signed that, too. Then came the pushback. Sterling's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and frowned. "The National Bank is resisting. They're citing the existing freeze Thane put in place and want 24 hours to review the conflicting orders." Odessa's eyes narrowed. "They'll have 4 hours. File the ex parte motion now. Judge Harrison owes me a favor from the Meridian case." While Sterling typed furiously, Odessa pulled a small black USB drive from her briefcase. No label, just a handwritten M in blue ink on one side. "This is the backup," she said quietly. "The original was destroyed, wiped from a server in Buckhead 17 months ago. Our forensic team took this long to reconstruct fragments from external backups and deleted email chains. It's all here. Internal communications, offshore transfers, shell companies registered in the Caymans, enough to prove systematic embezzlement." I took the drive. It was lighter than I expected. 3 years of someone's careful work reduced to 8 grams of plastic and silicon. Sterling finished his call. "Motion filed. Hearing in 2 hours. The bank will comply or face contempt." I plugged the USB into the secure laptop they had provided. Files opened in neat folders, spreadsheets with dates and amounts, email threads between Thane and unknown accounts, invoices for services that never existed. Millions diverted slowly, carefully, over years. My stomach churned, not from shock, but from the precision of it all. It wasn't an impulse, it was a plan. My phone, the new one Sterling had given me in the car, buzzed with notifications, social media tags and news alerts. I ignored them. Across the city at the Georgia World Congress Center, the National Tech Summit was in full swing. 800 attendees in the main hall, a live stream for thousands more. Thane was on stage in a Navy suit, mid-presentation about Vance Cloud Solutions' new enterprise security suite. The slide behind him showed projected revenue growth figures I had never authorized. He pointed confidently to the announcement of a partnership with Pacific Data Systems, a $50 million deal that would have been the company's largest to date. The audience applauded as he invited their CEO on stage for the ceremonial signing. Thane pulled out the company's titanium black card, unlimited limit, and handed it to the waiter who had brought champagne for the toast. The portable terminal beeped once, declined. He played it off as a technical glitch and tried again. Second beep? Declined. The third attempt caused murmurs in the front row. His phone buzzed against his thigh. He stepped aside to answer, his face still smiling for the cameras. "Mr. Vance, this is the compliance department at the National Bank. All corporate accounts have been frozen by court order, effective immediately. No transactions will be authorized until further notice." The color drained from his face under the stage lights. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Someone in the back began recording with their phone. The CEO of Pacific Data stopped his handshake midway, a suspicious look on his face. Thane tried to save the situation, joking about technical difficulties. But the moment was shattered. Partners exchanged looks. Investors checked their phones. In minutes, Vance Cloud crisis was trending. Back in the penthouse, I closed the laptop. The coffee had gone cold. Odessa gathered her papers. The freeze also affects the personal accounts linked to company funds. Credit cards, lines of credit, everything. I nodded. For the first time in 3 years, I felt something like control. Sterling stood up. We'll monitor the fallout. Tomorrow, if necessary, we take it public. I walked to the window. Below, the city lights twinkled in the distance. My city, my company, my life, all coming back together, piece by piece, carefully. The USB drive sat on the table like a small black bomb, waiting for the right moment. The morning light was just hitting the penthouse when Thane's phone began to vibrate incessantly on his nightstand. He picked it up sleepily, squinting at the screen. 47 missed calls. Messages from his assistant, board members, and investors, all marked urgent. The first message from his executive assistant read, "Call immediately. The medical records have been leaked." He opened the link she sent. A scanned document from Grady Memorial Hospital, dated 3 weeks before the accident. Diagnosis: spontaneous miscarriage due to prolonged work stress. No mention of trauma. Sela's signature on the discharge papers, acknowledging the loss. His heart sank. He kept scrolling. The file had been submitted as evidence in the emergency audit motion filed yesterday and then picked up by the news outlets overnight. The headlines were already live. Vance Cloud Solutions. CEO's wife lost pregnancy before alleged accident. Doubts arise over founder's conviction. Thane kicked off the sheets and ran down to the kitchen where Sela was pouring coffee. She turned, smiling at first, then froze when she saw his face. "Is this true?" he snapped, shoving the phone at her. Sela glanced at the screen and set her mug down carefully. "Thane, answer me. You lost the baby before the accident." She crossed her arms. "Yes." He felt the room tilt. "And you let all of us testify that Keziah caused it." Sela's voice remained steady. "You wanted her gone. The company was slipping through your fingers. I saw an opportunity." "An opportunity!" His shout echoed off the high ceilings. "You sent my sister to prison for 3 years for a lie!" "Our lie," she corrected coldly. "You believed it because you wanted to believe it. You needed her out of the way to take control." He paced across the marble floor, running his hands through his hair. "The board is meeting for an emergency session today. Investors are pulling their offers. That Pacific Data deal is dead." Sela went back to her coffee. "Then fix it. Deny it. Say the records are fakes." "They aren't fakes. They're from Grady. Your doctor, your signature." He stopped in front of her. "How could you look me in the eye every day knowing this?" "Why did you never ask?" she said simply. "You were too busy celebrating your new title." The silence grew heavy between them. Outside, a news helicopter hovered over the Buckhead neighborhood. Thane's phone rang again, his father's name on the screen. He ignored it. "You aren't the victim here," he said. "Neither are you," Sela countered. "We both wanted the same thing. I just made it happen." He stared at her, truly seeing the calculation behind the beautiful face he had married. "Out. Get out." "What?" "Pack your bags. I want you out by tonight." Sela laughed bitterly. "With what money? Your accounts are frozen too, remember?" He had no answer for that. On the other side of town, in downtown Atlanta, the lobby of Vance Cloud Solutions buzzed with unusual energy. Staff whispered in huddles. Security at the doors had doubled. I walked into the executive conference room where a small press pool was waiting. 3 cameras, half a dozen reporters from local outlets, and Bloomberg. Odessa had advised me to keep it brief and factual. No emotion. I stepped to the podium in a simple black blazer, my hair pulled back. Flashes went off. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," I began, my voice steady. "As the majority shareholder and founder of Vance Cloud Solutions, I am announcing an independent forensic audit of all company finances, effective immediately. This audit will be conducted by an outside firm with the full cooperation of law enforcement if necessary." Questions erupted instantly. "Ms. Vance, what about the medical reports released last night? Is this related to your brother's management? Are criminal charges being considered?" I raised a hand. Certain documents have come to light that raise serious questions about the events leading to my wrongful conviction. The truth will come out through the proper channels. Until then, I am reassuming my role as chairperson. My goal is to protect this company and the thousands of employees who depend on it. One reporter persisted. Do you believe your family framed you deliberately? I looked directly into the camera. The evidence will speak for itself. Justice always finds its way to the light. I stepped away from the podium after exactly 8 minutes. No more questions. Odessa escorted the press out. Afterward, Sterling handed me new printouts. Social media mentions were skyrocketing. The stock had dropped 12% at the opening, but stabilized after my announcement. The board wants an emergency vote on the leadership transition, he said. Let them have it, I replied. We'll be ready. Back in the penthouse that night, I stood by the window. My phone showed missed calls from my mother's number, 23 in total. I didn't answer. The lies were unraveling faster than they had been woven, and for the first time, I wasn't the one paying the price. The afternoon traffic hummed through the tree-lined streets of Buckhead as 2 moving trucks and a court officer's SUV pulled up before the gates of the sprawling Vance estate. I stepped out of the Escalade in black sterling Blackwood at my side, the eviction notice crisp in his hand. The house, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool, home theater, had been titled solely in my name since before my parents moved in 20 years ago. A premarital asset that the court recognized without dispute. The gates opened electronically. My parents, Thane and Seela, were on the front steps with suitcases already packed at their feet. My mother clutched a small jewelry box. My father held a single garment bag. Thane's face was swollen from lack of sleep. Seela kept her eyes on the ground. The court officer read the order aloud. Immediate vacation of the premises, personal clothing and toiletries only. All furniture and items purchased with company funds must remain. My mother was the first to break. She dropped the jewelry box and ran toward me, arms outstretched. Baby, please. This is our home. Think of your father's health. Her voice cracked into sobs. Oh, my daughter, she whispered, in the language of my childhood, the language of lullabies and bedtime stories. My father remained rigid, but his hands shook at his sides. The man who had built boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals couldn't meet my eyes. Thane stepped forward. Keziah, think about what you're doing. This will be all over the news. The company's stock. It's already all over the news, I said quietly. Amari arrived then in his Audi. He parked and walked slowly up the driveway, hands in his pockets. To anyone watching, he looked like the concerned younger son trying to mediate. He put a hand on my mother's shoulder. She's angry right now. Give her space. Then to me, in a soft voice, little sis, maybe you should cool off a bit. They're still our parents. His eyes met mine for a second longer than necessary. Steady, knowing. Thane knelt on the stone steps. Amari, talk to her. You're the only one she might listen to. My youngest brother looked at him with an unreadable expression. You made your choices, he said simply, then turned away. Seela finally spoke, her voice bitter. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I didn't answer. Neighbors had begun to gather behind the gates. Tech executives, doctors, the kind of people who valued privacy above all. But the phones were out, recording. A news van from Channel 5 pulled up, camera rolling from the street. The movers began carrying out the marked items. Artwork bought on company expense accounts, the custom Italian kitchen appliances, the gym equipment billed as an executive wellness program. My mother collapsed on the steps, sobbing into her hands. My father finally moved to help her up, but his legs seemed unsteady. Thane remained on his knees until Sterling politely suggested he stand up for the officers. 30 minutes later, they were outside the gates with 3 suitcases and 2 duffel bags. The only items they could prove were purchased with personal funds. The gates clicked shut electronically behind them. Across the street, a neighbor I had waved to for years was recording with her phone. By nightfall, the videos were circulating in neighborhood groups, then on Twitter and local news sites. Vance family evicted, tech founders' revenge became the headline. I watched from the entryway as the trucks drove away. The house felt suddenly empty, the echoes loud. Amari was the last to stay. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly once the others were out of earshot. I nodded once. He squeezed my arm briefly, the only physical contact we'd had in years. Then he walked to his car. The sun sank behind the Georgia pines, tinting the neighborhood in gold. Inside, the movers finished up. I stood alone in the foyer that still smelled faintly of my mother's perfume. The silence was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. For the first time, I wondered if revenge felt like a victory or just another kind of loss. The boardroom at the Vance Cloud Solutions headquarters in downtown Atlanta felt heavier than usual, the air thick with unspoken tension. I sat at the head of the long glass table, the city's skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind me. The 12 board members were present, some in person, others via video conference from San Francisco and London. No one spoke as they waited for me to begin. I opened the emergency meeting with a simple statement. We are here to address the financial and leadership irregularities uncovered in the ongoing audit. Odessa Rhodes stood beside me, projecting the first slide, a timeline of suspicious transactions dating back 3 years. The room shifted uncomfortably. The door opened. Amari walked in with a thick accordion folder, his expression calm but determined. He placed it on the table with a soft thud that seemed to echo. "With the board's permission," he said, "I would like to present additional evidence." A few members exchanged glances. Amari had been invited as an observer. His shares from his mother's trust gave him that right, but no one expected this. He opened the folder and began laying out documents, printed emails, bank statements, invoices signed for non-existent consulting services, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands linked to shell companies, payments to a private investigator who had followed me before the accident, bribes to the dashcam technician, small amounts funneled through gift cards and payment apps. "I started compiling this the day Keziah fired me," Amari said quietly. "Those small accounting errors weren't random. They were the first signs of systematic embezzlement. I pretended to stay neutral with the family to keep my access. At every Sunday dinner, every holiday, I documented what I could." He looked me in the eye for a brief moment. "That day, I chose her side. I just needed time to prove why." The room erupted in questions. A venture capital fund director demanded verification. Odessa confirmed the chain of custody. Everything was forensically digitized with timestamps intact. I let the discussion play out for 10 minutes before calling for a vote. Motion to remove Thane Vance from all positions effective immediately and refer the findings to federal authorities. Hands went up one by one. Unanimous. Thane wasn't present. He had been asked to stay away for the duration of the investigation, but his removal became official by the end of the hour. Months passed in a whirlwind of depositions and discovery. The U.S. Attorney's Office took over the case. Wire fraud, embezzlement, perjury, conspiracy. The trial lasted 6 weeks at the federal courthouse in Atlanta. The prosecutors painted a clear picture. Greed disguised as family loyalty. My parents took a plea deal to reduce their sentences, 18 months each for perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud. They avoided prison time beyond what they had already served awaiting trial, but they lost all voting rights in the company trust. Sela testified against Thane in exchange for probation and community service. Her role in initiating the false accusation earned her 5 years of probation and a permanent criminal record. Thane fought harder. His defense claimed it was all an aggressive but legal business strategy. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. 10 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for 7 years, plus restitution of $12 million. The amount traced directly to his schemes. I sat in the front row every day of the sentencing. My mother cried silently when his name was called. My father stared straight ahead, his face a mask. Sela looked at no one. When it was Thane's turn, the judge recited the charges. Embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit perjury in the wrongful conviction of Keziah Vance. Thane finally turned toward me as the bailiff approached to handcuff him. His mouth formed my name, but no sound came out. I held his gaze without blinking. The confusion, the anger, the pleading, it was all there. But so was mine. 3 years lost, a company nearly destroyed, trust shattered beyond repair. They let him away last. The courtroom doors closed with a heavy finality. Outside, the reporters waited, but I slipped out a side exit with Odessa. The Georgia rain had started again, soft and steady. In the car, she asked if I wanted to make a statement. "No," I said. "The verdict speaks for itself." I watched the courthouse recede in the rearview mirror. A whirlwind of emotions stirred inside me. Empty relief, something like mourning for the family that no longer existed, but mostly determination. The lies had had their day. Finally, the truth had its turn. A year later, I was sitting in the visiting room of the Federal Correctional Institution in Atlanta. The plexiglass between us was scratched and cloudy from countless conversations. Thane looked different. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on a frame that had lost weight. His hair was cut short, his eyes circled by fatigue. He picked up the phone on his side, with hands that no longer wore the heavy watch I had seen in family photos. I picked up my receiver. He spoke first, his voice raspy. "Thanks for coming. I didn't think you would." I said nothing, waiting. "I know an 'I'm sorry' doesn't fix anything," he continued. "But I've had time to think. A lot of time." He paused, searching my face through the glass. "Mom and Dad ask about you in every letter. They want to know if you're okay." I kept my expression neutral. Thane leaned in closer. "The company is doing well. I read the quarterly reports that come into the prison library. Amari is killing it as CEO." I nodded once. He swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to see you, to say it to your face." Finally, I spoke, my voice low and even. "There is no forgiveness. Not for you, not for Mom or Dad. The blood bond is broken. Legally, emotionally, and completely. I changed my name on all documents months ago. You are strangers now." His face crumbled, but he didn't look away. "I transferred full ownership and control of Vance Cloud Solutions to Amari," I continued. "He's the only one who chose what was right over what was easy, ethics over family pressure. He earned it." Thane's knuckles turned white on the phone. "I deserve this." "Yes," I said. "You do." The silence stretched between us, filled only by distant voices in other booths. When the guard signaled the end of time, Thane pressed his palm against the glass. I hung up without waiting for the rest. As I stepped out into the dry Georgia air, I felt the weight I had carried for 4 years shift. It wasn't gone, but it was different. Lighter, perhaps. 3 stolen years, a youth that won't come back. The stress of prison had taken its toll. Doctors confirmed the trauma was too deep for me to ever likely have a child of my own. Trust in my family of origin was shattered beyond repair. But refusing to forgive isn't weakness, it's protection. It's choosing to guard what is left of myself instead of handing it over to be broken again. Greed can destroy a family from the inside, turning love into a lever and loyalty into a burden. It starts small, resentment over shares, whispers about inheritance, and then it grows until people justify anything to get what they feel they're owed. True loyalty isn't automatic with DNA. It's chosen. Amari proved that by risking everything to stand for what was right when it cost him the most. I drove west toward the city, the Atlanta skyline rising in the distance. The company thrives under new leadership. I consult when needed, but mostly I'm building something smaller, something purely mine. Some losses are permanent. Some decisions define us forever. But survival, true survival, means deciding who gets to stay in your life and who doesn't, and living with that decision without apology.